Organized criminal networks are infiltrating our economy. Most of them use corruption. They are causing fear and innocent people's deaths with their brutal violence.
So that is why it's very important that this is recognized by the highest European level and that the declaration is very clear. We will double the resources.
We will be able, with the increased resources, to seamlessly bridge intelligence gaps between the member states.
Connect suspects, links, addresses, and from this we can in fact establish who is the criminal network or the terrorist network behind it.
Welcome to the Europol podcast, the official podcast of the EU Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation. Europol is combating crime every second of every day, 24/7. Europol's future is crucial for the future security of the EU, for safeguarding our way of life. The agency is tackling the future of security in Europe, so the future of Europol is the future of the EU's security. Destabilizing, nurtured online, and accelerated by AI. The very DNA of organised crime is changing. It's growing, evolving, and becoming more dangerous. It's a wake-up call. And just as crime is evolving and accelerating, Europol has to evolve to combat and anticipate the threats of tomorrow. Let's imagine we're in the year 2035. What do you think crime will look like then? We know it's not what it used to be. Pretty much everything has changed in recent years and months. It's a high-stakes battle between intelligence, power, and resilience. It's an arms race in which whoever embraces AI and technological developments first will win. Today's episode, the future of Europol. It's Olivia here, and this episode of the Europol podcast announces some exceptional and exciting news. Throughout this episode, we will look at why Europol has to take on more responsibilities to keep up with the changing DNA of crime. Together, we will find out how the EU has decided to change Europol, what the new Europol might look like, and what the operational impact of all of this might be. To find out about the future of law enforcement in Europe, let's first go back in time. Let's go to Brussels, to the European Parliament. It's a sunny day in the summer of 2024, and big news is revealed that will affect Europol's future. Let's hear what the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had to say in her check against delivery speech during the plenary session on the 17th of July, 2024.
Honourable members, security is not only about external threats. Cyber and hybrid threats are growing. Organised criminal networks are infiltrating our economy. Most of them use corruption. They are causing fear and innocent people's deaths with their brutal violence. They earn enormous amounts of money from drug trafficking, ransomware, fraud, trafficking in human beings, and they are not limited by national borders. So it's necessary that we respond to this growing threat on a European level. We must make sure that police can work across Europe without borders. That is why I will propose to double Europol's staff and strengthen its mandate. I want Europol to become a truly operational police agency.
President von der Leyen highlighted here the enormous criminal profits that are being made through the new DNA of crime. What's the solution? We need a strengthened Europol to fight the new changing DNA of serious and organised crime. So that was 2024. But what's the situation now at the end of 2025? Let's talk to Europol's Executive Director, Catherine de Bolle, to find out about the new Europol. So Director, we've heard this quite exceptional news. It sounds like it must be an exciting time for Europol.
Yes, these are exciting times. First of all, the President of the European Commission announced that she wants to double the resources and she wants to upgrade our legal mandate so that we can do more in the future to tackle serious and organized crime, cybercrime and terrorism, which of course is very important not only for Europol but also for the member states. And second, the decision that has been taken already and is final is the increase of possibilities we will have to tackle illegal migrant smuggling, which of course is very important because we see that 90% of the people who cross the EU's external borders irregularly, they do that with the assistance of migrant smugglers. So the fight is extremely important. We will have the possibility to use more and better, to make more and better use of biometrics. And member states will be more engaged. The information exchange will be stronger. And we will tackle also the online aspect of migrant smuggling much more than before.
So would you say that this will really increase our security in the European Union?
Of course. Europol supported already a lot of cases, but we needed to do more. And also when we talk about doubling of the resources, the proposal by the European Commission, this is very telling. It's really recognizing that internal security is a top priority, and the highest level of the European Union understands that and wants to help the law enforcement community, which is a very important message.
So this proposal on the table means that Europol's temporary migrant smuggling centre will be made permanent and will be reinforced. What are the next steps, and when will the proposal be finalised?
There will be a final proposal by the European Commission next summer. And then we will have the political discussions between member states, council, and then also the European Parliament and the Commission. It will be very interesting times. Unfortunately, I will not be there anymore. My tenure ends soon, and I will leave the agency in May 2026. And I hope that whoever follows me and whoever becomes the new executive director, that he will continue or she will continue the path we did set out over the last 8 years.
Okay, thank you for the update. I'm sure the impact of your work over the last 8 years at Europol will continue to be felt moving forward. Turning to another aspect now, what are the latest developments about the financial side of this doubling? We've heard something about €3 billion.
So the president of the EU Commission, Madame von der Leyen, she announced that Europol may get double the budget in the next EU budget financial framework. And the amount currently being discussed is €3 billion for the next reporting period. And this is double of the budget that has been foreseen in the previous period. So we welcome this proposal, but of course the discussions need to start with the member states and with the parliament. For us, it will be very important that Europol keeps in fact the kind of DNA it has, supporting member states. We work together with member states to fight crime, and we will be able to do even more and better in the future, which is of course extremely good news.
Yes, it's really good news for Europol, but why is it important to citizens that Europol has a bigger budget?
We see that crime is increasing, and serious and organized crime groups, terrorism, also cybercrime, it is all increasing. So the expectation from member states towards Europol is growing all the time. They expect more expertise, they expect more analytical support, and they expect us to invest and to develop new technologies to help them in their daily work, the investigations. At the moment, we are on our limits about what we can do. Our support is limited. We have to prioritize a lot because we are a successful organization. And over the last 8 years, we have become a part of the internal security architecture in the countries and in the EU. So that is why it's very important that this is recognized by the highest European level, and that the declaration is very clear. We will double the resources, and it's not only doubling the resources for Europol itself, but it's doubling the resources to make sure that the law enforcement community in the European Union is connected, and that together we will be able to do more. We will pull our resources together, and we will continue the fight against serious and organized crime, terrorism and cybercrime. And I really believe that this is the right moment in time to do so, because in some areas, we need to have more possibilities also on a European level, and to continue to support and to keep up the pace with the development in the member states and with the crime developments, we need to have more resources. So that's why we are very happy, and we welcome the proposal of the European Commission. It will now be key that all the stakeholders, political authorities, but also the law enforcement community, that they reflect very well how will we develop this new future with the opportunity that is given by the European Commission.
So Europol has gone through a lot of changes over the last 8 years. With the new budget proposal in mind, where do you see the organisation going?
So We did change a lot in the environment. We did change a lot in the mindset. We always want to support member states in the real operational issues. We want to become a part of the solution for the national law enforcement community. And that's the way we changed the agency, not only in the structure, but also in the mindset. And over this period, we have doubled our support to member states. We support more than 3,300 operations on a yearly basis, which is a huge number. But we are very proud because it showcases that member states believe in the added value of Europol, and member states need us as part of the solution. Europol has been created by member states because member states needed the European cooperation. And the law enforcement community in the European Union, they wanted to have a trusted partner at European level where they know the information exchange is safe and secure and where they can work in an environment of trust. So for me, for the future, this basis, the basics of Europol are very important. We need to have the support of the member states law enforcement community, and we need to have the support of the European Commission. And this will also be key for the future of Europol, because Europol is there to serve member states law enforcement agencies, to help them in their investigations, to add value, to assess the data, to foresee experts in areas where it's difficult to find experts on a national level. And we really believe that with doubling of the resources, we will be able to do more for member states.
So a strengthened Europol means more security. We need this increase in security because of the new DNA of crime we've heard about in this season. But what does it mean practically if Europol is to double its staff? Jürgen Ebner, the Deputy Executive Director for Governance at Europol, fills us in on the latest conversation about the future of the organisation. So it looks like it will not just be Europol's network that's expanding, but Europol staff and budget too. As you're in charge of implementing this, the initiative to double the staff of Europol, could you please share your thoughts on this?
Well, first we have to say we were really very happy when we heard that the President of the Commission, President von der Leyen, has spoken about doubling the resources of Europol, meaning financial resources, but also the staffing. This is, of course, very much welcome. This can be easily explained if you look on how many investigations are supported already by Europol per year. This is more than 3,000 investigations a year. And I can tell you there would be thousands of more investigations where member states ask us to support them. But we cannot, because it's simply of lack of resources that we have to prioritize which kind of investigations we would support. But there's a clear need, and this is also expressed by the police chiefs of the European Union member states, that Europol should support even more in these investigations. And for that, you simply need staff. And this we have to do in a more concise and even more intense way. Our executive director expressed it also several times at several occasions, that this is all about that crime is accelerating. We really need these additional resources in order to respond to the increased need to investigate in international and organized crime. Our vision for that reason is that we will be able, with the increased resources, to seamlessly bridge intelligence gaps between the member states and facilitating by this the work of the member states' police and authorities in order to be able to respond to these challenges of mainly serious and organized crime, cybercrime, and also terrorism. And what Europol is aiming to do is to add value in the sense that we complement what is already done in the member states and that we deliver support to the EU law enforcement agencies of the member states that makes sense. And our aim is not to duplicate, let's say, any efforts. And one thing should be very clear at the very end. We fully respect the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, and therein the Article 88, which clearly says that the police is for the member states and it's Europol to support the member states. And this is why this organization was created.
We know that crime doesn't stop within or outside the EU's borders. So to combat the new DNA of crime, Europol has to expand its global reach as well. So it's not just Europol staff that would be increasing. We know that we have this increasing global reach. Can you tell us about how Europol is expanding its network?
Well, Europol is actually really designed to operate in partnership. This is already existing from the very beginning of Europol. But it's getting more and more relevant for Europol to have a closer also collaboration with private sector, with so-called third parties, as simply all the challenges Europol has to deal with can be only, let's say, closely responded to with this network of partners. So it's something about to create, against the network of organized criminals, a network of EU agencies and like-minded partners in order to be able to also operate on a successful level against the criminals that are challenging the security situation in Europe. And by this, we follow a so-called multi-agency approach. That means that we do not only work based on the experience of a police, but even further expanded also with customs authorities, with also to a certain extent other authorities that have a say in the security sector. And by this, we have already established a very good network with the 27 EU member states, but this goes also beyond, because also criminality doesn't stop at the borders of the EU. It's really going beyond, and for that reason, we have already established a lot of partnerships via so-called external agreements that can take various forms. And of course, we work closely with all EU institutions and agencies, for example, like Eurojust, Frontex, European Public Prosecutor Office, just to mention some of them. And this all has to be done on so-called cooperation agreements. But even beyond that, we have to, of course, cooperate with other countries that are outside of the EU.
All right. Can you give us a recent example of one of these agreements with a country outside the EU?
Yes, of course. The most recent example, and it was just the working arrangement signed by the executive director in the presence of the chief of the police of Jordan, is a working arrangement we have established with Jordan. Jordan, from our point of view, and this is supported by all the EU member states and the Commission, which have to set the framework and also to decide on which priority partners we should be able to establish so-called working arrangement, is, from our point of view, really a stabilizing factor in the Middle East area. They have a very well equipped and also trained police force, and they hold information which is really interesting for us to combat already organized crime, serious crime forms of illegal migration that are threatening for the EU, which is then to be accomplished by this information, which is, of course, to be shared under the strict conditions of a so-called working arrangement. The working arrangement as such foresees quite a set of possibilities, which is most important to be mentioned, that Jordan can send, based on the working arrangement in the future, a liaison officer who can work here on the spot together with the huge liaison officer community which is established at Europol. And Jordan will be also connected to the most powerful information exchange network of the police in the EU, which is called the Siena network.
Given the talk about the new Europol, how does the agency plan to expand its partnerships in the future, in particular with private companies?
We will continue to cooperate with our international partners to reduce the influence of organized crime or other hostile actors in order to keep up the internal security of the EU. So this is about deepening the cooperation, which is one element which is decided, as I said, by the mentioned board of Europol. But it is also about to keep expanding our network. And one thing is very clear. In this, the private companies will play in the future, for sure, a more important role than they already play nowadays. This can be easily explained if you look simply already in investigations that are ongoing nowadays. For example, you cannot do financial investigations without involving the financial sector, so the banks that hold relevant information. And if you look now in the digitalization of the world, it is self-explanatory. You cannot investigate in the area of cybercrime, or at least online crime, without having online service providers on board. They hold the information which is relevant for conducting these investigations. And for that reason, we have to find ways on how to cooperate with them even closer, in full respect that, of course, private companies are not designed for combating crime. They have a business purpose. And of course, our purpose is to fight crime, and we are not there to support the private business. So we have to find ways on how to cooperate. And this has to be done in a trusted and transparent public-private-ship manner. It is very clear that, let's say, we always have to keep the principle of accountability to the public. We cannot simply share any data with private parties and private business And we also have to be very careful what kind of data we take on board from this area. But if this is organized in a trustful and transparent way, which can be also easily controlled by, for example, the parliamentarian oversight by the European Data Protection Supervisor and so on, I think then we are in a good way to expand our network with very important partners, which was not that visible in the past and also not legally that possible. But now the Europol regulation offers a lot of possibilities, and this is to be explored.
So we've had the political overview. We've heard from the Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director. Now let's go into more details about how Europol determines the crime-fighting priorities in the EU member states. Europol's Operational and Analysis Centre and threat assessments are key, as Europol addresses emerging threats in real time. Time to talk to Tamara Schotte, Head of Analysis and Strategic Coordination Unit at Europol. So what is Europol's Operational and Analysis Centre?
The Operational and Analysis Centre is in fact the heart of Europol. It's the place where all the information, all the data on the investigations that Europol is supporting, so the more than 3,300 per year, probably this year nearly 4,000 investigations, where all this information from these investigations is arriving on a 24/7 basis. The information comes in, Europol does a cross-check and provides immediately back an answer to the member states or to our partners. It's the place where we connect the dots. It's the place where the information comes in, we check the information against other criminal investigations, we make an analytical report of it, and by this we can in fact connect the dots across the EU, connect suspects, connect links, connect addresses where crimes or terrorist attacks or activities took place, and from this we can in fact establish who is the criminal network or the terrorist network behind it.
So more and more information is coming in, but how can Europol deal with all of this information?
Well, indeed, in recent years, we have been confronted with an increased amount of information arriving at Europol. It shows that member states and partners trust Europol more, but it also shows that the threat from organized crime and from terrorism is quite high and keeps sometimes increasing. We see rises in drug trafficking, we see the migrant smuggling problem, we see the cyber attacks, and we see even previously known as more niche areas, the online frauds, really becoming a booming business for organized crime and for terrorist networks. So that's why it's important and crucial for us as an operational center to in fact to do 4 things. And the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that we have this 24/7 availability. So as you know, Europol is not only about the European Union, we have partners across the globe. Crime is not stopping at the borders of the EU, so our support should also not stop at the borders of the EU. If it's 8 o'clock here in the morning, it's not 8 o'clock in New York. If it's 8 o'clock in New York in the morning, it's not 8 o'clock here. So that's why we in fact have set up a 24/7 center where we day and night can receive information on crime and terrorism from across the globe. So that in fact shows that the first thing that we need to do to fight serious and organized crime from the analysis and from the Operational and Analysis Center is to ensure that we are available on a 24/7 basis and that we connect, in fact, all the partners involved.
So how do you prioritize?
How do we do that at Europol? And how do we do that in the EU? We have a framework that is called EMPACT. It's a very long, difficult abbreviation, but in fact it means the European Multidisciplinary Platform Against Criminal Threats. I don't want that anyone tries to repeat it, but in fact what it is, it's a prioritization mechanism across the EU. It's based on Europol's SOCTA, another abbreviation, the Serious and Organized Crime Threat Assessment. And in fact, on the basis of this SOCTA, which is recommending what are the key threats towards the EU, our Ministers of Justice and Home Affairs take a decision on what are now those priorities. Now, looking at those priorities, so that's the first area that we can focus on. But secondly, we also then need to look at or prioritize on who are now the most threatening actors. And for that, we have another mechanism, which is called the high-value targets, which we support via operational task forces, in which we also have a priority mechanism, prioritization system, in which we try to focus on those actors, those criminal and terrorist actors that pose the highest threat, in fact, to our society. So first, we prioritize. Secondly, of course, we need to focus on data, on this massive amount of information. Every investigation today generates large amounts of data. In fact, sometimes it's overwhelming. And what we need to invest in the Operational and Analysis Center is that we need to have the ability to quickly look into that data, to effectively and efficiently analyze that information so that we can identify the patterns, identify the most threatening people in these networks. For that, we need the right tools, we need the right expertise. The Operational and Analysis Center is foreseeing in the tools for the 150 analysts in our organization and is also foreseeing in the training of the analysts across the Directorate. And also very often we support member states with training in operational and strategic analysis. But it's not only about analyzing the data, it's also about connecting with other databases. We have, in fact, a massive amount of information to do a kind of continuous threat monitoring. And that's also one of the key roles of the 24/7 Operational Analysis Center. We have established a continuous threat and risk monitoring system. We have a kind of a watch mechanism. So whenever we see something new as a threat, as a risk, we produce an early warning notification and we inform our member states and our partners about these new threats. Secondly, because you have that amount of information, it allows you also to make dedicated threat assessment, to make dedicated risk assessments. And this is something which is unique in the EU. Europol is the criminal information hub. The Operational and Analysis Center is the criminal information hub where we hold all the information, where we can make early warnings, where we can make threat assessments about what is going on in the area of serious and organized crime and terrorism. And it's these threat assessments that are the basis also for our operational work, for the operational work also sometimes in the member states, but also for the policymakers and for the political level in the EU. It's on the basis of these threat assessments of our data that they also decide, again, on what the priorities are. And the cycle is round. So drugs trafficking is clearly a priority and was accepted and endorsed also by our ministers, by the Justice and Home Affairs Council and the member states as a priority, with a main focus on synthetic drugs trafficking and cocaine trafficking. The second important area is migrant smuggling and trafficking in human beings. We're also very happy that we get a dedicated center now at Europol to deal with this migrant smuggling. Then, of course, another area that I mentioned before is everything related to this online environment, so this nurtured online. So online frauds has become a booming business. Together, in fact, still with cyber attacks, ransomware and malware attacks remain one of the biggest threats also to our businesses and to our society, to our citizens. And in addition to that, also you have the other crime areas which are also still a priority. Think about the online child sexual exploitation, again in this online sphere. Think also about environmental crime, and particularly waste trafficking remains quite a big threat and is a growing criminal phenomenon market in the EU. And then, of course, also the firearms trafficking. I think you can see it by the violence on the streets in the EU. But of course, we also have the situation with Ukraine, in which we expect that firearms trafficking will further increase. That's why also Europol, on the basis of this priority, has set up or is establishing an EU firearms hub to improve also the analysis and the data gathering with regarding to firearms trafficking. And in each of these crime areas, we really want to target the most threatening criminal networks. That's why we also have a priority focused on these most threatening criminal networks. Again, a kind of a prioritization mechanism that we are setting up to be able to efficiently and effectively fight serious and organized crime in the EU and support our member states in the best possible way.
So Europol's threat assessment, which highlighted the changing DNA of crime, determines the key threats to the EU, and then ministers of justice across the EU will understand which areas to prioritise when they work together to target the most threatening criminal networks. Now we've seen the political discussion around Europol's future, we've understood how the priorities are set, we've looked at how Europol is expanding its global network. Let's hear from our executive director about how the doubling of resources will really strengthen Europol and strengthen the fight against crime across the EU.
And it's not only doubling the resources for Europol itself, but it's doubling the resources to make sure that the law enforcement community in the European Union is connected and that together we will be able to do more. We will pull our resources together and we will continue the fight against serious and organized crime, terrorism and cybercrime. And I really believe that this is the right moment in time to do so, because we need in some areas, we need to have more possibilities
That's why Europol has to expand and increase resources to stay one step ahead of criminal networks. Through threat assessments, operational focus, and improving coordination across member states and international borders, Europol is fighting serious and organised crime and terrorism. Throughout this season, you've heard about how the DNA of crime is changing. We've discussed how Europol currently has to prioritise cases because there are not enough resources to actually tackle every single case at Europol level. A strengthened Europol means strengthened security in the EU, so we can all enjoy the liberty of our free democracies and economies. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Europol podcast. This is the end of the current season of the Europol podcast. Please do go back to our other seasons and listen to our episodes on the biggest cases and the most serious threats. Tell us what you'd like to hear about in the next season via our social media channels or the contact form on our website at www.europol.europa.eu. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you soon.